My parents gave away my expensive money to save money. They didn't realize she was a $25,000 service dog, or that I'd been quietly paying all their bills for years, not part 3. The real explosion came on Saturday morning. I was at the dog park with Luna working through her training exercises, the specific routines that kept her skills sharp and reinforced our working relationship. When my phone rang on her voice shrill with panic, the mortgage payment bounced. She said without any pleasantries, "That's unfortunate. Don't play games with me. The bank says there's insufficient funds in the account. That's because I'm not covering the mortgage anymore. You have to cover it. We'll lose the house. Then you shouldn't have given away my dog. It was just a dog." I stopped walking. Luna immediately sat beside me, sensing my sudden attention, her body alert and ready to perform her trained responses. "Luna," I said into the phone. My voice, deadly calm, is a certified service dog trained to assist with post-traumatic stress disorder. She detects the onset of panic attacks and performs specific tasks to help me manage my disability. She is not just a dog. She is medical equipment that costs $25,000 and is protected under federal law. "We didn't know about any disability," Mom said, her voice smaller now, but still defensive. "Because I never told you. Because I managed it privately with Luna's help, without burdening you with my problems. But you decided you knew better than my doctors. Better than federal law, better than me." "We made a mistake," she whispered. "Yes, you did. A very expensive mistake that's going to cost you everything I've been paying for that afternoon." They showed up at my apartment. I watched through the window as they sat in their car for several minutes, heavily arguing about strategy about what to say to fix this when they finally came to the door. Mom's eyes were red and swollen from crying. "We need to talk," she said. I let them in, but didn't offer coffee or ask them to sit. Luna positioned herself between me and them, not aggressively but protectively the way she'd been trained to create space when she sensed my stress levels rising. "We're sorry," Dad said immediately. "We didn't understand about Luna being a service dog. Her name is Luna, right, Luna? We didn't understand about her being medical equipment." "What did you understand?" I asked. They exchanged glances. Mom spoke first, her voice careful and measured. "We thought you were just spoiling her, spending too much money on an expensive pet, when family needed help with basic necessities. So you took her. We thought you'd understand once you had time to think about it," Dad added. "Family should come first. Blood is thicker than water." "Family," I repeated. "When did you decide I was in family?" "That's not fair," Mom protested. "Isn't it? You made a decision about my property without consulting me. You gave away something that belonged to me because you decided it wasn't important. When did family start? Meaning you get to make unilateral decisions about my life." Trevor appeared in the doorway behind them. Apparently, this was supposed to be an intervention. "Look," he said, stepping inside uninvited. "Everybody made mistakes here. We're cutting off Mom and Dad completely is just cruel. They raised you, their family." "I'm not being cruel. I'm protecting myself." "For what?" "Your own family." I gestured to Luna, who was still monitoring the situation carefully, reading the tension in the room, and my elevated stress levels from people who think my medical equipment is disposable, from people who take my things without asking because they think they know what's best for me, from people who think my money is their money, but my decisions don't matter. "It's not like that," Mom said, tears starting again. "Then explain how it is." She couldn't. None of them could articulate a version of events that didn't involve them taking my property and giving it away without permission. "We need the money back," Dad said, finally abandoning pretense. "The mortgage, the utilities, the insurance premiums. We can't afford any of it without your help." "Then you should have thought of that before you gave away Luna. We said we were sorry. What more do you want? I want you to understand that sorry doesn't fix broken trust. Sorry doesn't change the fact that you took something that belonged to me. Sorry doesn't mean I can trust you not to do it again. The next time you decide something in my life isn't important enough." Trevor stepped forward, his face reeking with anger and frustration. "You're really going to let them lose their house over a dog? I'm protecting myself from people who steal from me," I said. Whether you call her a dog or medical equipment or a purple elephant, she belonged to me. And you took her. We gave her back after I threatened legal action, after I had to prove she was a service dog. After I spent 6 hours tracking down my own property and providing documentation to get her released, Luna pressed against my leg. Sensing my rising stress levels, I took a deep breath, letting her presence ground me the way she'd been trained to do. Here's what's going to happen, I said, my voice calm and final. You're going to figure out how to pay your own bills. You're going to respect my property and my decisions. And you're going to understand that I am not your personal bank account to be accessed whenever you decide my priorities are wrong. And if we can't, Mom asked for her tears, then you'll face the consequences of your choices, just like I've been facing the consequences of trusting you. They left after that, but not before Trevor tried one more guilt trip about family loyalty, abandoning the people who raised me. I closed the door on his speech and engaged both deadbolts. The weeks that followed were chaotic for them, peaceful for me. Phone calls I didn't answer, text messages I deleted without reading, voicemails full of increasingly desperate pleas for help, for understanding, for just one more chance. I blocked all their numbers. The house went into foreclosure proceedings within 6 weeks. Dad's medication costs forced him to choose between pills and groceries. Mom's car broke down and stayed broken because they couldn't afford repairs. Trevor moved back in with them. 3 adults crammed into a failing household, all of them learning what life actually costs when someone else is, and subsidizing it. I heard about their situation through my Aunt Carol, who called to lecture me about family responsibility and Christian forgiveness. They're your parents, she said, her voice heavy with judgment. You can't just abandon them like this. They abandoned me first, I replied. They just didn't call it that. They made one mistake. They stole my medical equipment, I interrupted. They took something that helps me manage a disability and gave it away to save money on dog food. Would you be having this conversation if they pawned someone's wheelchair? 6 months later, I got a call from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. This is attorney David Walsh. The voice said I represent your parents in their bankruptcy proceedings. Congratulations, Mr. Henderson. Your parents are facing complete financial ruin. They're going to lose everything they own. I'm aware they've asked me to contact you about a possible family settlement, some kind of arrangement that might help them avoid complete bankruptcy. I was quiet for a moment, watching Luna sleep peacefully in her bed, beside my desk, content, safe exactly where she belonged, Mr. Walsh. I said finally, my parents gave away my service dog to save $60 a month on dog food. They thought my medical equipment was disposable property they could redistribute. Does that sound like people who understand the concept of family arrangements? I understand there was a misunderstanding about the dog. There was no misunderstanding. There is theft, and now there are consequences. I hung up and blocked that number too. A year later, I saw Mom at the grocery store. She was using food stamps, her cart filled with generic brands and manager special markdowns. She saw me to her face, cycling through shame, anger, and something that might have been hope. She approached slowly, like someone approaching an unpredictable animal. How are you doing? She asked quietly. I'm well. Luna's well too. She flinched visibly at Luna's name. I heard you bought a house. I did that yard, quiet neighborhood. Luna loves having space to run. That's good. That's really good. We stood there in awkward silence, other shoppers moving around us. The weight of everything unsaid, hanging between us like a physical presence. I want you to know, she said finally, that we understand now about Luna, about what she really means to you. We were wrong. We made a terrible mistake. I nodded. Yes, you did. Is there any way? Can we fix this somehow? I looked at her, really looked. The woman who had raised me taught me to ride a bike, help with homework, bandage, scraped knees. She was also the woman who had given away my service dog to save money on pet food. I don't know, I said, honestly. Trust isn't something you can just fix with an apology, but we could try if we really understood now. You could try. I said, but trying would mean understanding that Luna isn't negotiable, that my boundaries aren't suggestions, that my disability is real, and my needs matter even if you can't see them. She nodded eagerly. We understand that now. We really do. Do you? Because a year ago you thought I was being dramatic about just a dog. What's actually changed besides your financial situation? She was quiet for a long time, processing the question. Finally, living without you changed things. Seeing what it really costs to handle everything ourselves. And Luna. She's important to you, more important than we understood. She's not important to me, I corrected gently. She's necessary for me. There's a difference. I left her there in the cereal aisle, still processing that distinction. When I got home, Luna was waiting by the door, tail wagging, ready for our evening walk. I clipped her to her collar. We headed out into the fading golden light. 2 blocks from the house, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number, a photo of a German Shepherd mix in a shelter cage along with a message. Saw this guy at the pound today. Thought you might want to give him a home too. It was from Trevor, his first attempted contact in over a year, and he was suggesting I adopt another dog, as if one service dog was interchangeable with any random shelter animal. As if he still fundamentally didn't understand what Luna actually was or why she mattered. I deleted the message without responding and kept walking. Some people never learn, never change, never grow. But that was their limitation now, not my problem. Luna looked up at me, sensing my brief spike of irritation, then wagged her tail and returned to her investigation of interesting scents along the sidewalk. Content in her work, secure in her home, exactly where she belonged. And for the first time in years, I was exactly where I belonged. Story 2. My sister earned everything, even my $12 million wealth, according to my parents. They were stunned at the dinner table by what I did next, though. I'm Sarah, a 38-year-old woman, and I need to talk about this. Do you have any family relationships where one child is infallible and the other may as well be invisible? Yeah. Greetings from my life. Actually, up until I was 8 years old, everything was really typical. My parents weren't very loving, but they were there and I was the only child. Mom would probably assist with schoolwork. On occasion, Dad would take me fishing at Lake St. Clair. We were all right, but we weren't the Brady Bunch. The night that altered everything then arrived. It seems like yesterday to me. At 2 in the morning, my Aunt Kelly arrived. Mom was in the hospital, so I was told to pack a suitcase. Rachel, my sister, was coming, but something wasn't right. It would take another 2 months for her to arrive. The weeks that followed were a haze of hospital stays and private discussions. Rachel was little, incredibly little. With all these cables and tubes, she resembled one of those baby dolls I owned. I was not permitted to approach her or even touch her. I felt it for the first time then, the imperceptible barrier separating me from my relatives. Our household became this antiseptic cocoon when they eventually brought Rachel home. Mom developed a germ obsession. Everywhere I'm referring to industrial strength disinfection. Every room has a hand sanitizer station and cleaning is ongoing. Even now, I still get anxious when I smell bleach. However, here is the section that truly confused me. I was sent to either Grandma Marie's or Kelly's house if I even displayed the smallest hint of illness. And I mean each and every time. Give a single sneeze. Assemble your belongings. Coughed a little after Grandma. You leave. I honestly found it enjoyable at first. I was going through Aunt Kelly's great collection of Nancy Drew books, and Grandma Marie would bake cookies. However, children are not dumb. You eventually begin to understand the true nature of the situation. They're not sending you on excursions. They're treating you like a danger, as if your very presence may endanger your beloved sister. I made every effort to attract their interest in a more healthful manner. Everything received straight A's, really. Mom would hardly glance up from Rachel's most recent calendar of doctor's appointments. Won first prize for a sustainable energy project at the scientific fair. I was recently ordered to leave the display board in the garage by Dad, due of Rachel's sensitivity to dust from cardboard. Does that even exist? When I was 12, the real kicker happened. I had spent months learning how to perform Bridge Over Troubled Water on the piano in preparation for the school talent competition. Yes, I realize it's a bit on the nose. I suppose Rachel had a 99.1 Kiev fever the night of the concert. The crowd consisted of no one. The entire family, including both sets of grandparents, attended Rachel's 15-minute flute concert 2 weeks later, during which she essentially killed it. Rachel quickly learned how to use the device. She had outgrown any real health problems by the time she was 7 years old. The show went on despite that. A headache. Must skip school and remain at home. Are you feeling worn out? Another person. Can you guess who has to do her housework? Are you anxious about an exam? In order to have the deadline extended, Mom would really call the school. I began to spend more and more time in my room reading books on antiques art and history. Sometimes it's funny how life turns out. Since Rachel claimed to be allergic to my lavender air freshener, my room became my haven and the one place she wouldn't go. What's truly broken, you know? In fact, I felt thankful when she pretended to be ill. At the very least, I'm taken to Grandma Marie, where I'm asked about my day and my interests. It was my grandmother who initially sparked my interest in antique jewelry. She allowed me to classify and arrange her incredible collection of costume pieces. I suppose I should have interpreted that as foreshadowing. The blatant partiality wasn't even the worst aspect. In order to defend it, they rewrote history. Since Rachel had such a difficult beginning, she just needs more care. Sarah has always been quite self-reliant. Sarah is aware of her sister's particular requirements. I didn't comprehend. Sorry. When I was younger, I didn't see why being healthy made me less deserving of love. I can now see how those years influenced who I am. The unceasing message that I was inconvenient or hazardous in some way. That doesn't simply vanish. At least it taught me to be independent, though. When no one is interested in your accomplishments or inspecting your assignments. It doesn't take long to become your own cheerleader. High school. The majority of people either adored it or detested it. Me. In middle school, when Rachel was establishing her empire of play, I viewed it as my ticket out. I was making preparations to get away. And I'll tell you, nothing inspires you to achieve, like being aware that no one will do it for you. Do you recall the time I spent sorting through Grandma Marie's jewelry collection? In fact, I learned the need of methodical planning and meticulousness from that experience. In high school, I approached everything with the same attitude. At home, my desk resembled something from an organizing magazine. Study timetables are neatly organized using color-coded notebooks. Everything had a place. I used to be teased by Rachel about it, referring to me as Rain Man. Very kind sis. The problem with being invisible, though, is this. You might as well do whatever the heck you want because no one is watching you fail or succeed. I became a member of any group that didn't interfere with my part-time work at Carson's Diner. Carol, the proprietor, deserves special recognition for remembering my birthday when my own parents failed to do so. Check the debate team. President of the National Honor Society, verify. Main editor of the school newspaper, verify. It was on the debate team that I truly settled in. Destroying someone's argument while remaining perfectly composed has a very rewarding effect. It also helped me learn how to bargain, which would be useful in the future. However, at the time I was unaware of it. Just so you know, one state twice. Due of Rachel's crucial soccer matches, my parents were unable to attend both contests. She played for the C squad, didn't play at all. Things really started to become intriguing in my junior year. I received a flawless score on the SATs. Not in the same way. Well, that's quite nice. Excellent. Excellent, 1600, I mean. Many folks receive less than 1%, you know. I recall thinking there must have been an error as I stared at the results page for almost 20 minutes in a row. Hurried home to inform my folks. Foolish. I am aware. In the kitchen, Mom was assisting Rachel with her homework in English. This is how the discussion unfolded. Me, look, Mom, I received a flawless SAT score. Mom, that's lovely, honey, but please don't do that. Rachel is attempting to focus. Tomorrow is a significant test for her. Rachel, yes. In fact, some of us must study, Miss Perfect. Mom. Rachel, my dear, don't worry, simply put, you're a different type of student. Somewhere I still have the printout of those SAT results. It was never even pinned to the refrigerator. But in English, Rachel received a C+. With a refrigerator, that infant had ideal real space. Magnet, you have our utmost pride. The process of applying to colleges was fascinating. Without alerting anybody, I submitted applications to 15 schools. I completed all of the financial aid paperwork on my own, wrote all of the essays, and obtained my own recommendations. The true MVP was Mr. Chen, my guidance counselor. My parents couldn't be bothered, so they stayed late after school to help me with the FAFSA. After that, the acceptances began to come in. Harvard, all of them, including Yale, Princeton, and the University of Michigan, offered scholarships. Knowing what would happen if Rachel discovered them, I stored them all in a locked box beneath my bed. All of a sudden, they had somehow turned into her. But I'll be by myself if Sarah attends Harvard. Or some bullshit, such as that. Rachel joined the JV cheer squad on the same day that I received my full ride offer from the University of Michigan. Can you guess which one was honored with a family meal? While they were at Olive Garden, I ate microwave mac and cheese in my room. But what do you know? That scholarship was the key to my success. Complete lodging and board and tuition. A stipend for books even. At last, I could leave that house where I was either unnoticed or a bother. On the day I received the acceptance envelope, I spent an hour sobbing in my favorite spot, the fourth-floor window seat, with a view of the park at the local library. Not tears of sadness, tears of relief. I told them I was attending the University of Michigan during dinner. They were my parents' answers. Give them a peek. Michigan, Dad. But that's only the beginning. What if you are needed by Rachel? I hope you're not counting on our assistance with costs, Mom. The cost of Rachel's cheerleading contest is high. Rachel, God, oh God, at last. Would you mind giving me your room? I need a location for my videos on TikTok. I saved money by working extra shifts at Carson's the summer before college. At the conclusion of my shifts, Carol, bless her, would always make sure I had leftover pie to take home and would give me additional tips. She also gave me priceless advice on how to recognize real individuals in a world full of imposters. In restaurants and in life, the people who make the most noise typically have the least to say, she said, baby. It's University of Michigan moving day. Unexpectedly, my parents were unable to attend. Kelly drove me since Rachel had a cheer competition, gave me a $500 envelope, and assisted me in setting up my dorm room. This is what your grandmother Marie wanted you to have, she continued. She's quite pleased with you. Later, it was discovered that Grandma had been setting aside that sum of money from her Social Security benefits for months. I vowed to myself that first night in my dorm room. I was going to create such a wonderful life that it would be impossible to be missed, not to exact retribution. For the 8-year-old girl who used to be sent to my grandmother's house for sneezing, not to prove anything to my family. A haze of all-nighters, quick ramen, and incredibly fortunate freedom characterized college. Earned a summa cum laude degree from Michigan University. My parents were too busy assisting Rachel with her transfer to her third college in 2 years to notice. However, this is when the narrative takes a surprising turn. I was hired for this entry-level job at the Detroit auction firm Everett & Phillips. For obvious reasons, I won't mention the true name, but if you work in the industry, you're probably aware of the one I'm referring to. A really upscale location. Many old money customers. That kind of agreement. I began working in their estate sales department, essentially cataloging the belongings of wealthy individuals after they passed away. It wasn't very glamorous, but at least it covered the expenses. My initial months were very typical. I logged countless china sets, cataloged antique furniture, and so on. The Kingston estate followed. Mrs. Kingston was an old widow who died childless and left behind what everyone assumed was a huge collection of costume jewelry rooms upon rooms of it. That time spent with Grandma Marie was helpful in this situation. Something catches my attention while I'm going through this jewelry mountain. This brooch is Art Deco. It wasn't very ostentatious yet. Something about it seemed unique. The clasping mechanism was far too intricate for a copycat, and the weight was inappropriate for costume jewelry. I must have researched old jewelry markers and autographs over my whole lunch break that day. Using the company's subscription to several databases on antique jewelry, I ended myself staying late at work. My conviction grew as I continued to look. This was not jewelry for a costume. This was the authentic version. The issue was that I was the new girl. If I started saying we could have a treasure on our hands, no one would believe me. I followed the advice of the debate team, systematically prepared my case, studied in the evenings and at lunch breaks for 2 weeks. I learned all I could about authenticating Art Deco jewelry. I also paid for an online gemologist course using part of my pitiful money. I finally had the bravery to approach my supervisor. Mr. Harrison included historical records comparison photographs and other materials in his presentation. This is how the discussion unfolded. "Mr. I believe the Kingston collection may hold something important. Harrison is seldom taking his eyes off his phone." "Sarah, those have previously been included in our costume pieces catalog. Look at these maker's markings I know. They are in perfect harmony with the stone setting process and Cartier's 1925 signatures." Harrison is now paying attention. "Where did you find out about all of this?" "Me, I conducted some study. To cut a long tale short, at auction that costume brooch brought $47,000. It turns out that it was a part of a limited edition collection created in the 1920s for a European duchess. Here's the real kicker though. Harrison then began providing me with additional parts to verify. All of a sudden, my pointless pastime of sorting out old jewels acquired real worth. I put myself into knowing as much as I could about jewelry from the past. I enrolled in as many online courses as I could, studied things while spending weekends at estate sales, even began writing down several authentication methods in a small notepad. My abode resembled the fever dream of a diamond expert. Printouts of old certification manuals and trademarks adorned the walls. Results began to come in for the auction house. I was discovering important details that others had overlooked, establishing connections with collectors, gaining knowledge of the market. My commission checks increased in size. I wasn't just getting by for the first time in my life. In reality, I was saving money. My family, of course, continued to be remarkably unconcerned. Even as a fool, I continued to attend Sunday dinners. This is how the discussion unfolded. "Sarah is still at that antique store, isn't she, Mom? I am an auction house." "Mom," and indeed. I just verified the authenticity of a rare Tiffany item. Rachel is interfering. "Oh my God, speaking of jewelry, I no longer cared about it. But you guys need to see this charm bracelet I got at the mall. I had discovered something that was completely mine for the first time in my life, something I truly excelled at. Something that was unrelated to the family or being Rachel's sister." Disappointment. The Rothschild collection followed. About 2 years had passed since I started working at the auction house. It was a sizable estate with old money family and a lot of industry hype. I saw it while working on the team that cataloged their jewelry collection. An ordinary Art Nouveau pin that had gone unnoticed by everyone else. Studied it for 3 days. Hardly slept. When it sold at auction for $238,000, it was finally discovered to be a piece from a well-known French jeweler's private collection that had been believed to have been lost during World War II. I was summoned to Harrison's office. I believed I was being promoted. Rather, he made a statement that altered everything. "You're squandering your skills here, Sarah. You ought to manage your own authenticating company." I initially dismissed it with a laugh. Me launch a company. With what cash? However, the concept gained traction. On the side, I started taking on little freelance authentication assignments. I was known for having an excellent eye. Private collectors started making direct contact. I was sitting in my little apartment one evening, surrounded by the authenticating equipment and jewelry manuals I'd been gradually gathering. I was able to achieve this when I came to a realization. I could construct anything myself. I thus took the logical course of action. Drained my savings account, took out a huge loan secured by my car, and hired a small office space in a less desirable area of town. Everyone believed I was insane. Perhaps I was. No larger than a college dorm room, it was a repurposed storage space above a Chinese restaurant. The Wi-Fi only worked if you sat in the window's corner and the place smelled like Kung Pao chicken all day, which is why the rent was so low. It was mine though. The initial months were fascinating. And I mean scary when I say fascinating. Around 4 a.m., I would awaken. Calculating the number of months till my funds ran out made me sweat. I felt like I had a rope around my neck from the loan installments, a card table that I purchased from Goodwill, and a chair that I really discovered on the curb made up my workplace furnishings. Properly cleaned it. Do not be concerned. The problem with the high-end jewelry industry is that relationships and reputation are crucial. I began modestly conducting authentication work for nearby antique dealers during my time at the auction house. Although I charged less than the large corporations, my meticulousness was starting to be recognized. Word got out. 6 months later, the pivotal moment occurred. I received a call regarding a collection of brooches from the Victorian era from a dealer I had dealt with at the auction house. Prior to sale, the owner sought verification. Ended up becoming a sizable collection resembling the works of 3 generations of family members. Enormous! I hardly slept for 2 weeks as I worked on it, recording everything. 2 extremely rare artifacts that had been mistakenly recognized as later replicas were discovered. The owner was so pleased with my thorough report that she awarded me a 10% commission when the pieces sold in addition to paying my fee. That commission was $86,000 more than I had earned over the 2 years prior. My phone started ringing more all of a sudden. Many more private collectors were aware of my talent for underappreciated items. Estate attorneys seeking advice on inheritance-related matters. I even started receiving authentication work from my former auction house. I'm very certain Harrison was quietly spreading the news. Regards, boss. Jenny, a recent gemologist graduate who reminded me too much of myself at that age, was the first employee I recruited in year 2. Despite her intelligence, she was ignored due to her calm demeanor. She is my head of authentication currently, and she is very invaluable. The company expanded more quickly than I had anticipated. Relocated downtown to a real office. Farewell. The fragrance of Kung Pao chicken. Assembled a group of experts. Gained a reputation for locating misplaced parts. The number of significant historical jewelry items that are kept in people's attics is astounding. Mislabeled as jewelry for costumes. However, success came with its own set of difficulties. It became more difficult to hide it from my family as we grew in size. They still believed that I was employed at an antique store. During family meals, Rachel would say these patronizing things. Sarah, I was planning to give some of my old jewelry to Goodwill. Perhaps your little store would desire it. That morning, I had just verified the authenticity of a $1.2 million Faberge piece. Yes, I will have a look. As my other daughter, Mom, continued to introduce me to others. Somehow she works with ancient jewels. At the same time, we had recently launched our 3rd office site, and happily I was being cited in Forbes under my business name. Keeping it a secret became almost enjoyable despite the strange aspect. Like this joke I'm telling myself in secret. Knowing that I had recently concluded a deal for more than her yearly income. Rachel would boast about her entry-level marketing position as I sat there at Sunday dinner wearing my Target discount outfit, actually Chanel, and even start playing small games with me. Like showing up to family gatherings wearing authentic Harry Winston items and hoping no one would notice. They didn't. At one point, I was wearing an antique Patek Philippe and Rachel spent 20 minutes flaunting her expensive $200 Michael Kors watch. More valuable than her vehicle. However, controlling development was the true difficulty. We had offices in New York, Chicago, and Detroit by the 5th year. I was flying more often than I was sleeping. Became known for being discreet. It turns out that many affluent people wish to keep their jewels genuine and hidden from the public. It was a big sum of money. For example, a group of financial advisors had to be hired. Significant. However, I continued to lead a simple life. Purchased a lovely, modestly decorated home in a desirable area. Drove a fancy, yet unobtrusive vehicle. I only truly oversplurged on my home office, which had the greatest security system available, cutting-edge authentication systems, and a specially designed vault that would make Fort Knox envious. The irony! They believed that by allowing me to assist them, I was being thrifty. It's very kind of Sarah to assist, Mom would add. To cope, she must be consuming just ramen. In the meanwhile, I recently verified a collection that brought in a commission greater than their mortgage. What's strange about success, it gets more difficult to convey to those who have always thought less of you the more you have. Explaining colors to someone who has only ever seen them in black and white is like that. They lack the necessary background information. My business was doing really well at this time. Our reputation was solid gold. and we had a monopoly on the Midwest's high-end jewelry authentication industry, pun intended. Still, I would pretend to be Sarah, the humble employee of the antique business, and travel to my parents' house every Sunday for supper. The dissonance in thought was becoming absurd. I would arrive at my parents' house wearing well-chosen everyday clothes to eat Mom's overdone pot roast after spending my mornings on conference calls with collectors in Dubai, and my afternoons authenticating works worth millions. Rachel took over the discussion by sharing anecdotes about her most recent marketing success, which generally involved getting her boss coffee without spilling it. I can still clearly recall one Sunday in particular. I had just completed a significant transaction in which I verified the authenticity of a misplaced Cartier piece that had been in a safety deposit box for 40 years. 7 figures was the commission alone. I drove directly to my parents' house after that meeting. The joy of the successful authentication is still being felt. Mom, Sarah. Is everything all right, honey? You appear to be wearing somewhat worn-out clothing. I purposefully picked up a $3,000 cashmere sweater since it was subtle. I'm trying to save money, you know? Rachel? Well, if you had landed a legitimate career rather than tinkering with antique jewels. Dad. Rachel. Be kind. Not everybody can achieve your level of accomplishment. Trying not to laugh, I almost choked on my pot roast. Around this time, my parents began receiving monthly payments. Discovered that they were having trouble with Rachel through Kelly, some medical costs and student loans. They might have to sell the house Mom had casually suggested, despite everything that couldn't be allowed to occur. The house where I grew up was still there. Establish a $5,000 monthly anonymous deposit to their account. I said I was living on rice and beans and giving $1,000 of it when they asked. They thought Aunt Kelly or other family members were responsible for the remainder. Naturally, Rachel claimed credit for motivating family members to provide a hand. Although the money was helpful, it also had unexpected effects on my life. My parents began to treat me as though I were some sort of great poor person who sacrificed all for family with a strange mixture of pity and condescending pride. Rachel's expenditures, meanwhile, became increasingly extravagant. She would say that the new expensive bags she brought to dinner were outlet fees. They weren't. At 20 paces, I can identify a genuine Gucci. Began going on lavish vacations and sharing pictures of her fortunate life on Instagram. I was very certain she was going on shopping sprees with my support funds, but I kept my mouth shut. The irony seemed too good to be true. The college fund drama followed. Rachel declared her intention to return to school in order to earn her MBA. Of course, another private university. The golden child deserves nothing but the finest. They couldn't afford it, so Mom called me crying. Me, Rachel might want to consider state schools. They also have quality programs. Mom, you don't understand, honey. There are norms your sister must uphold. Speaking of assisting, though, would it be possible for you to raise your monthly payment for a few years? I increased the monthly payment to $7,000. Not even damaged my account. Assuming I was living off of ramen to help out, I saw them commend Rachel for taking charge of her studies. That was a little painful. The actual kicker, Rachel wanted to go to the same business school where I was presenting a guest seminar. The dean personally invited me to give a lecture on luxury products authenticity and company growth, but my family was unaware of this. I had to come up with an explanation for missing that week's Sunday supper. This is how my own achievement began to feel. Separate existence. Like I had a hidden identity and was some sort of corporate superhero. At night, I was managing an authentication business worth millions of dollars. I was just Sarah, the unsatisfactory daughter who worked at an antique store on Sunday nights. But the untruth was becoming more and more burdensome. It became more difficult to remain silent. Every time Rachel made a patronizing remark about my profession, every time my mother apologized to her friends for my modest living, and every time my father advised me to get a legitimate employment. In retrospect, I believe I always anticipated a spectacular conclusion. I simply didn't think it would blow out so spectacularly on Thanksgiving. 2 weeks before to the holiday, it began. Due of her back agony, Mom called and sobbed. The idea of preparing Thanksgiving dinner for 20 guests was overwhelming her, and she had been diagnosed with a herniated disc. Now, I would love to say that I offered to help out of pure altruism, but the truth is, I was sick of acting like her dry turkey was palatable. Me, this year. How about I take care of the food? It can be accommodated for me. Mom, we can't afford a caterer, honey. Me, don't stress over the price. I have been amassing funds. Mom sounded worried. Are you sure you're not taking out a loan? I use this upscale catering service to plan everything for my business gatherings. They produce incredible stuff. The type of cuisine that leaves you questioning why you ever bothered to prepare it yourself. Cost more than what I made in 2 months, according to my parents. But whatever. When Thanksgiving morning finally arrived, I was feeling really well. I wanted to keep an eye on a significant online auction in Hong Kong, so I brought my laptop. If my client won the auction on this amazing Art Nouveau necklace, they would be extremely interested in authenticity. The meal was delivered precisely on schedule. Everything was ready. Naturally, Rachel had something to say. Stuffing from the store? Really, Mom's is far superior. This comes from the girl who, while attempting to cook toast once, triggered the smoke alarm. You could see that people were genuinely enjoying the food, even though Mom was always apologizing for not cooking herself. When Rachel tried the maple glazed Brussels sprouts, which incidentally cost more per dish than her weekly shopping budget, she even stopped talking. Between dinner and dessert, I took a moment to look at my laptop. I had to be prepared in case my client won, since the auction was becoming more and more fascinating. It was set up in my former bedroom, which my mother had maintained since high school. Rachel's room, meanwhile, has undergone 3 renovations. Everything took a turn for the worst at that point. I had my login program open in several tabs displaying different accounts and active transactions. Instead of knocking, Rachel rushed in. There are certain things that never change. To use my phone charger for a loan. When she saw the screen of my laptop, she decided it was time to finally show her older sister how pitiful she was. Rachel grinned. Let's reveal Sarah's true activities to the world. She took my laptop and strode into the dining room before I could stop her. Imagine 20 people, including my parents, relatives, uncles, and cousins, all full with fancy turkey and half drunk on pricey wine they believe to be from Trader Joe's. Rachel. It's time to find out what significant job Sarah is doing this Thanksgiving. She proudly flipped the laptop around, obviously anticipating that whatever little antique deal she believed I was working on would make me seem foolish. The room fell still, as if you could hear the ticking of the pricey clock I had given my mother for Christmas, which she believed to be a copy. My screen appeared. $12.4 million is the current account balance. The authentication contract is $485,000. $1.2 million was just transacted. The Hong Kong auction company reported $4.2 million in quarterly profits. In 3 seconds, there were roughly 5 distinct emotions on Rachel's face. The final one fell halfway between nausea and astonishment. In fact, she stumbled a little upon standing. Rachel was hardly able to speak. This isn't possible, Mom. What is it, honey, Rachel? Rachel's voice broke. She's wealthy. Sarah is wealthy. If it was possible, the quiet grew even more profound. Then Mom burst out laughing, really laughing. Don't be ridiculous, Mom. Sarah is employed at that small antique store. I straightened my basic cashmere sweater, which cost more than their monthly mortgage, and slowly got to my feet. Me. In fact, Mom, I have had one of the biggest jewelry authentication businesses in the nation for many years. I authenticate artworks worth millions of dollars based on such remarks from antique shops. You didn't inquire about that small matter. 3 cities are home to its offices. Dad's drink choked him. Aunt Kelly let her fork fall. Uncle Mike began to cough violently. Then something changed in Mom's laughing. Her face turned crimson and red. She got up so quickly that her chair toppled over. You have millions, Mom, yelling. You also allowed us to struggle. Me fight. Each month I send you $7,000. Sitting on millions, Mom. Your sister owes money for her education. And there it was. No. Well done? No. Whoa! We're really pleased. I was immediately upset that I hadn't given them more cash. Rachel broke down in tears. I realize it's shocking. talking about how I had cheated on the family. Dad chimed in. What made you so self-centered? We are your parents. You were reared by us. I lost it at that point. Years of being disregarded and ignored, as if they were relatives. Disappointment, everything poured forth. Me, brought me up. Every time I sneezed, you sent me to visit my grandmother. You missed every milestone, every honor, and every accomplishment, because Rachel may feel excluded. You took out loans for her fancy education, but never saved a dime for my college. You're upset because I made anything for myself now. Chaos ensued for the following 5 minutes. Dad yelling about unappreciative kids, Mom yelling about household responsibilities. Rachel would alternate between asking me how much money I had and crying. The pricey caterers, who appeared to be in great discomfort, were attempting to serve dessert in the meanwhile. Mom had earlier praised my Hermes bag as a decent imitation, so I scooped it up, grabbed my laptop, and left. I could hear my mother making plans for how to spend my money behind me. As I drove home in my reasonable automobile, I mentioned something about Rachel's MBA and a new car. It's actually a BMW limited edition. My phone began to overflow with texts. The conversation in the family group blew up. Rachel began sharing posts on Facebook about her siblings' selfishness and secret family money. What was the most bizarre aspect, though? For the first time in years, I felt as though I could breathe normally again. It was like watching a cyclone hit in slow motion during the days after that Thanksgiving. However, the debris represented my sanity, and the hurricane represented my family. First, let's talk about the SMS messages. After supper within an hour, there were more than 200 messages and 47 missed calls on my phone. Mom had this interesting development. 7:42 p.m. You have no right to abandon your family. 8:15 p.m. We must discuss this like grown-ups. 9:03 p.m. You should give your sister a piece of your achievement. 10:30 p.m. Regarding homes in nicer communities, I've already given a realtor a call. 11:45 p.m. Why don't you respond? This is your mom. Despite her billionaire sister had been hoarding wealth, despite witnessing her loving family's struggles, Rachel had gone full social media warrior and launched an epic tirade on Facebook. The comments were crazy. Suddenly, distant family members and former classmates from high school had strong judgments on my moral character. This is when it really got to me, though. I tried to aid Rachel's career for years, and she really wrote about it, advising her to leave that small antique store and move higher. She was also privately rich. The betrayal is quite painful. My phone almost fell across the room. She had only ever advised me to try selling jewelry on Etsy as a job. The flying monkeys then appeared. It's when toxic family members make other people feel guilty if you don't know what it means. Susan, who I see maybe once every 3 years, and you phone to remind me how important family is. Uncle Bob, who probably still believes I'm 12, sent a lengthy speech about the value of wealth sharing by email. In order to express her opinions on family responsibilities, even the sister of my third cousin's wife managed to get my phone. But when they arrived at my workplace on Monday morning, the real fun began. Mom, Dad, and Rachel were seated in our reception room when I stepped in. They informed my receptionist Jenny that they were scheduled to provide authentication services. Rachel was holding on to her Michael Kors purse as if it were very valuable. The talk proceeded as well as one could anticipate. We've talked about it as a family, Mom. Me, a family conversation in which the subject of the conversation is absent. Mom is not paying attention to me. And we believe it is only just that you create trust funds for each and every one of them. To get her new life off to a good start, Rachel needs at least $2 million. I want to retire together with your mother and dad. We're considering a Florida beach home. Me, I've been sending you $7,000 a month. Did you miss that, Rachel? Compared to what you have, that is nothing. You owe us. Me, for what exactly do I owe you? Missed graduations, years of being disregarded and incessant comparisons. Sarah, don't be so emotional, Mom. We sacrificed everything for you. Me, no. I threw myself into it. And what do you know? I'm finished. There in the entrance of my own workplace. Removing the monthly remittances to their account, I took out my phone. Mom really let out a gasp as if I had hit her. Rachel began to pretend to cry, but she quickly stopped when she saw that it wasn't working. It became nasty at that point. They wouldn't go. I had to make a security call. It was unreal to watch my 60-year-old mother being dragged out while yelling about unappreciative kids. Jenny inquired as to whether I wished to file charges. Their names were placed to the building's do not admit list after I declined. For weeks, the abuse persisted. Fake email addresses and new phone numbers were even used to try to contact me via the customer service line of my business. At last, I had to issue a formal legal notice threatening to prosecute someone with harassment. Mom played her last card at that point. She gave Grandma Marie a call. Grandma Marie, however, is wiser than all of them put together. What did she say? "Well done, Sarah. It is long overdue for someone in this family to achieve success on their own terms." It was 2 months before Mom spoke to her again. 6 months have passed since Thanksgiving. I changed all my numbers and relocated to a new home with better security. The business is performing better than it has in the past. As it happens, my family issue actually attracted several well-known clients who valued my confidentiality during the entire matter. Rachel continues to share passive-aggressive updates about family betrayal and poisonous money. As of the last time I heard, she was announcing to everyone that she was launching her own jewelry authentication company. I wish you luck in your endeavor. After I had my lawyer write them a formal letter outlining the specifics of how harassment charges would impact their life, Mom and Dad eventually stopped attempting to get in touch with me. Now they're telling everyone that they never wanted my money in the first place, and how my soul is being prayed for. But what do you know? I feel free for the first time in my life. No more subtly insulting Sunday meals. I will never longer minimize my achievements. Don't give the Rachel Show any more money. I'm finally establishing appropriate limits according to my therapist. I claim that I'm at last leading a genuine life. Story 3. My daughter selected the man my cheating ex departed with after erasing me from the wedding I paid for. I decided to cancel everything and let the mayhem do the talking. I'm a 57-year-old man who never imagined publishing anything of this nature, but I've been holding this within for weeks, and I really need to get it off my chest. To be honest, I don't really know where else to go. This is about my 27-year-old daughter, Kay, and how she essentially tore my heart out, which made me do something rather drastic, about which I'm still not really sure how I feel. Here is some little background information since it is important. My first marriage produced only one kid, Kay. When Kay was 7 years old, her mother left her for a man named Tom and fled to Europe. Before I met my present wife, Gina, a 45-year-old woman, I raised Kay alone for 5 years. To be honest, those 5 years were difficult. A single father was attempting to manage a company and raise a child who was having a lot of difficulties as a result of her mother leaving her. Anyway, Kay told me she was getting married to this man named Ben approximately 2 months ago. Over the years, Kay and I have experienced several issues. You wouldn't believe the things I've had to endure, really. But I was very delighted for her when she told me about the wedding. Like, at last something positive. She appeared very into this Ben guy, and I thought maybe she was finally figuring things out. The problem was that Kay and Ben were essentially penniless. They had been surviving off of my money until last year, when she finally found a respectable job. Yes, I am aware that I most likely gave her too much freedom. I did what any father would do since they couldn't afford anything more than a wedding at the courthouse. Offered to cover everything, including the location catering, flowers, music, and wedding gifts. We are discussing a wedding that will cost $50,000. I don't want to boast, but I can afford it since I manage an export company that has been in my family for 2 generations. I recall the day we had our meeting to discuss the wedding arrangements. In fact, Kay seems content. I mean, really thrilled. She was showing me all these Instagram pictures and Pinterest boards of wedding-related items she liked, which was the first time I had seen her acting that way in years. For a little moment, I thought we could finally have the father-daughter bond I've always desired. She chose a wedding planner who had planned several high-end weddings in our neighborhood. Extremely professional, complete with a crew. Kay attended all of these sessions with him, helping him choose decorations and other items. I assumed it was her day, so I just paid the deposits and let her take care of everything. In addition, I was really busy at work. What do I actually know about wedding planning, to be honest? One evening after she gave me some photos of the location, I recall emailing her. She chose this stunning location beside the lake. Very elegant. I told her that I was excited to accompany her down the aisle and that I was proud of her. She just returned a thumbs up emoji. I suppose I was too engrossed in the situation to recognize that anything was wrong right there. For around a month and a half, everything appeared to be going well. By the way, I was paying all the costs, which continued growing while Kay handled all the wedding preparations. For example, who needs an ice sculpture and a chocolate fountain? We should be okay, I thought. In order to get a decent suit built, I even began working with my tailor. Jenna was assisting me with color selection and other tasks. Even though Kay has been cruel to her for years, she has always been incredibly supportive of Kay. However, small things began to seem strange. At a cafe, Jenna's cousin met one of Kay's friends and told her how happy we were about the wedding. Kay's pal was perplexed and remarked, "Oh, I thought she wasn't inviting them." According to her, removing toxic family members was necessary for her emotional well-being. When Jenna's cousin inquired about her meaning, the friend only muttered something clumsily about having a very difficult upbringing before shifting the topic. I dismissed it at the time, supposing she could have misinterpreted the situation, but wow, I should have listened then. Around this time, my brother Joe contacted me to ask about the wedding date since he wanted to book flights. And that's when everything started to go apart. I decided to add him to the guest list by giving the wedding coordinator a short call. The person on the phone starts acting strangely, saying things like, "Oh, I'm sorry, sir, but the guest list is already full, and I'll need to check with the bride about any changes." It should have been easy. I am now wondering what the devil this guy is acting as. Like he wants permission to add one person, even though I'm basically paying for everything. In order to see what we're dealing with, I somewhat protest and ask him to simply email me the complete guest list. "I'm not authorized to share that information with anyone," this guy stammers. I kinda lost it at that point. To be honest, I could have handled this situation more skillfully. I informed him up front that I sign his checks and that I would either call his supervisor or get that list from him. Yes, I am aware it was rather typical of Karen, but something didn't feel right. At last he gives up and sends me the list by email. It did not have my name on it. It didn't have my wife Jenna's name on it. However, would you like to know what the actual gut punch was in black and white right there? The bride's father. Tom will lead the bride down the aisle. Tom, the same man who assisted my ex-wife in leaving our kid who is 7 years old. When they relocated to Europe, the same man informed my ex he wasn't prepared to become a father. Before they went, the guy remarked, "Was your problem now?" and looked me in the face. Then something clicked. It wasn't simply that I wasn't invited. This was about removing me entirely, about replacing me. What's the worst? Kay had already begun making up excuses for it. I phoned my parents and sister, even several members of our extended family, in fact. They had all heard the same narrative in one form or another. How I was manipulative and dominating, how I never helped her, and how I was emotionally abusive. For months, she had been setting the stage for this, most likely telling Ben's family the same thing, and making up a tearful tale about my being a bad father to avoid them wondering why she had cut me off. I may have spent an hour or so staring at that email, wondering if I was reading it incorrectly. However, no. Even Kay's initial emails were given to me by the wedding coordinator. She had given them explicit instructions to keep Jenna and I out of the event, including a lengthy section on security procedures. After spending $50,000 on my daughter's wedding, I discovered that I was not even permitted to go. Furthermore, rather than having me escort her down the aisle, she is having the man who left her do it. The man who hasn't even sent her a birthday card in 2 decades. I won't act like I handled it nicely. For around a week, I was on a really nasty bender, like having shots for breakfast bender, sort of. Jenna was rather concerned, kept urging me to eat, but I was unable to comply. I simply sat in my home office, drinking myself to insanity while gazing at the email. During that week, I think I phoned Kay 50 times, all of which went directly to voicemail. I began off calm, left a number of messages, and then became increasingly irate and upset. Looking back, that was really humiliating. However, when your child does something like this, what exactly do you say to them? Seeing Jenna attempt to take it all in was the worst part. For 14 years, she has been a part of Kay's life, got her through high school with my help, remains from college to rehab. Yes, it is a very other matter. When others discussed Kay's actions, she consistently stood up for her, and Kay pays her back in this way. Throughout all of this, I kept receiving bills from the wedding planner with frequent updates concerning deposits, catering, floral, and other fees that needed to be paid. They were all like new slaps. Kay was still frantically organizing her ideal wedding, as if everything was all right, throwing a party with my money that I wasn't even permitted to go to. She was at her bachelorette party that week, I discovered later. On my niece's Instagram, I came across images. She seemed so content as she partied with her pals, not at all concerned. I'm sitting at home in the meantime, having a total breakdown, trying to figure out how I went so wrong as a father that my child would do this to me. Yes, I am aware that I probably come out as pitiful. A 57-year-old guy is in tears because his daughter has been cruel to him. However, nothing can prepare you for such treachery, guy. As if I've been duped by business associates, went through a difficult divorce, dealt with a variety of nonsense. However, this struck a different chord. I couldn't stop thinking about all the times I'd pictured myself walking her down the aisle, how I'd managed to stay in her life, in spite of all the drama, the arguments, the midnight calls from hospitals and police stations, and how I'd never given up on her, despite everyone's advice to do so. She was now making a decision. Tom? A week after leaving what must have been the most awful voicemails ever and feeling wretched. I swear I shudder when I hear them again. I eventually grew up enough to understand that I had to address Kay directly. I couldn't simply sit there any longer, even though Jenna attempted to talk me out of it and advised me to wait till I had more calm. I then take a car to Kay's flat. I helped him pay for this upscale establishment until she was able to secure employment last year. The entire drive over. I'm practicing my next statement. I was trying to remain composed, but my hands were trembling so much that I could hardly steer. When I get to her house at approximately 6 o'clock in the evening, I ring the bell around 5 times before she eventually answers via the intercom. I'm currently quite busy getting ready for my wedding dad. All she says is that will not even make me feel as like I'm a door-to-door salesperson or whatever. I kinda lost it, but I'm not proud of what I did next. When someone finally let me in, I pushed all the other buzzers. I then rode the elevator to her level, where I could hear her and Ben fighting through the door. Then, with a very uneasy expression, Ben opens up. Kay standing there in their living room, which incidentally I had equipped. All of these wedding publications and sample centerpieces are all around me. She treats me as if I were a nail in her shoe. "What are you looking for?" she says. I make an effort to remain composed. Do it. Calmly, I ask her why she kept Tom escorting her down the aisle a secret from me. Her answer: "At least he never replaced Mom," she replies with a chuckle. What I wonder? She was literally abandoned by this guy. I'm the bad guy for getting married again after 5 years of being a single father, and I haven't spoken to her in 20 years. Then she throws this gem at me. You know now, however. Well done. Saves you money and time on trip. If I get around to it, I'll send you pictures. She spoke so nonchalantly as if she were discussing the possibility of postponing lunch arrangements or something. Ben appears to be trying to vanish as he stands there. Then she strikes me. I was forced to sit. Dad boundaries. You've been domineering all along. I will not allow you to spoil my wedding, as though you had destroyed everything else in my life. I initially believed her to be exaggerating. Ben then raises his voice. Kay informed me that when she was younger, you struggled with anger management. You used to constantly shout at her, she informed me. Threatened to expel her for misbehaving. Ben continues by claiming that I never gave her any support, just made an effort to regulate whatever she did. Stunned, I stood there. Kay had even persuaded her own fiancé that I was a violent monster. I began to question Kay about how she could have done this to me. To Jenna. She interrupts me. Oh, the Jenna drama repeats itself. Dad and his beloved Jenna are poor. Have you ever considered the possibility that I might not want your substitute wife to attend my wedding? At that moment, I became aware of something. On the coffee table is a framed picture of her and Tom. A recent picture. As it happens, they have been communicating for months. Behind my back, she had been organizing this entire situation using my money to pay for a wedding, so she could pretend to be happy with the man who had thrown her away. I questioned her about what I had done that was so awful. Tom walking her down the aisle is what she would like. What did she say? "You're exaggerating. I didn't tell you for just this reason. Your sentiments are the center of all you do. I'm getting married today. My decision. Simply put, you are the checkbook. Only the checkbook. Having been there for every crisis, meltdown, rehab stay, and midnight emergency for 20 years. And to her, I am just that, a checkbook." "Good luck, man," I murmured, glancing at Ben. "You will require it." After that, I departed. It felt like hours, yet the entire confrontation probably lasted 15 minutes. I was dazed as I drove home. At one point, I was hyperventilating and had to stop. I couldn't drive anymore, so I contacted Jenna to come get me. Jenna recognized me with just one glance at my face when she scooped me up. Simply knew. Like we used to do when Kay was younger, she took us out for ice cream, as well as having a rough day. She remained silent. Allow me to enjoy my Sunday while attempting to keep my composure in public. I was unable to move on from the altercation at her residence. She really answered when I called her the following day, most likely by chance. I began questioning her about what I had done that was so awful. I'm not sure why I behaved that way, but I had to know the answer. She seemed to let out all of the fury that had been bottled up for 20 years. Kay claims that because I insulted a stepmother, I am the worst parent in history. It doesn't matter if I didn't consider dating for 5 years after her mother departed. 5 years of managing a business, raising a child who was increasingly misbehaving, and being a single father. Jenna, too. She has been really kind to Kay, going above and above. Excellent. In high school, Kay was found in possession of tablets. Yes, that took place. She found a counselor thanks to Jen. As Kay was leaving school, Jenna tutored her for hours. However, Kay claims that Jenna is merely a swindler who took her father's money. Then she mentioned this incident that happened while she lived with my sister C. I reasoned that perhaps Kay needed a change of scenery after some truly difficult times. I reasoned that perhaps being around a cousin might be beneficial because my sister has a daughter of the same age. Not at all. Kay began severely tormenting my niece, like ruining the lives of this unfortunate child. Kay expected me to side with her when I challenged her about it. I was furious when I refused to support her actions. That was me choose other people above my own daughter, she said yesterday. Conveniently, she forgets all the occasions when I did pick her, similar to the time she was discovered using such drugs at school. I put up a fierce fight to prevent her from being expelled. When her grades were too poor for any respectable college, I called in every favor I could. To get her in anywhere, I used my business connections to pull strings. Excellent. Then there is the financial aspect. The money stuff. Oh, God. Are you aware of the high cost of rehabilitation? Because I do. Twice. She first became heavily addicted to drugs shortly after graduating from college. A year later, it happened again. Every time I gave up everything to support her, I took out loans, maxed up credit cards, and did whatever it required. Up until last year, she lived with us without ever making a rent payment. I covered all of her expenses, including her credit cards, phone, and automobile. Even after all of the yelling battles, the awful names she used to call Jenna, and the 3 a.m. crises. I continued to help her because, after all, that's what fathers do. But she had the guts yesterday, having the audacity to tell me that I owed her this wedding. That after wrecking her life by getting married again, I figured the least I could do was pay for it. She became upset when I reminded her that I was spending $50,000 for this wedding as a favor to her, claimed that every good parent would want to provide his daughter with the wedding of her dreams. After losing it, I informed her that she was being entitled. A poor, ungrateful move. In her eyes, she began to point out every single thing I had ever done incorrectly. How I left her behind while she was little by traveling for work. The excursions that covered all of her expenses, you know. How I stood up for Jenna when Kay called her derogatory names because I preferred her to her. Indeed, Jenna's Middle Eastern was affected, and Kay made some extremely hurtful remarks about it. The last straw. She expressed her desire that her mother had brought her to Europe, rather than abandoning her to me. At that point, I realized that she would have preferred to stay with the people who had abandoned her after 20 years of trying to be a decent father. I was just broke after that call. For the first time in my life, Jenna discovered me weeping in my workplace. Jenna claims to have simply sat with me, did not speak up. At last, Jenna lost her temper. Not at me. The state of affairs after 14 years of marriage. I haven't seen her before. Actually, I'm furious. Sure, frustrated, but not furious. She continued repeating things like Kay has to learn and we need to defend ourselves. This is not how she should handle others. I take it that Jenna is a teacher works with children that are having problems. According to her, Kay's actions were typical of narcissistic entitlement. I sat there staring at my desk's accumulation of wedding expenses. After that, you pay a $15,000 deposit and an $8,000 catering advance, $5,000 for flowers, and $3,000 for a DJ. All of this money for a wedding that I was not even permitted to attend, where my own child would march around with Tom as if they were a happy large family. Something in me suddenly exploded. I attempted to halt payments on everything when I phoned my bank first thing in the morning, but the most of the deposits were non-refundable. In any case, at that time the money didn't matter to me. I simply wanted to put an end to this whole situation. I started by calling the venue and letting them know that I was the one who had made the deposit and that I wished to cancel. In fact, they were rather empathetic after I gave the circumstances. The manager even told a tale about how his own child interrupted him. I suppose misery enjoys company. Next, I called off the catering. Then the photographer, the DJ, the flowers, and everything else aside from the wedding planner. Kay, finding out and making new plans was something I didn't want. Petty, yes, most likely. But I was unable to think clearly because I was so wounded and enraged. I nearly backed out at one point when I was canceling everything. On my desk, I noticed a photo of Kay from her high school graduation. In fact, she was grinning in it. It was one of the last times I saw her truly joyful. I nearly canceled everything at that moment. But then I recalled how she grinned and called Jenna such deplorable names when she informed me about Tom. She said that I was only the checkbook. After that, I continued. I ignored the fact that she had the outfit at her house and that it had already been paid for. I'm not entirely cold-hearted. In addition, it was the one item she and her pals had truly looked forward to choosing. It's pretty messed up, you know. The wedding planner continued sending me automated emails about impending deadlines while I was canceling everything. The final menu choice is due. It's time to select the song for your father-daughter dance. Every one of them was like a stab to the stomach. During all of the cancellation calls, Jenna sat by my side. I believe she was afraid that if she left me alone, I would back out. When I became too upset to speak, she even took over some of the calls. She told the florist, "No, we don't want to reschedule as I recall. We would like to cancel entirely." I couldn't stop wondering how she would respond if she found out. I wanted her to feel the same pain that I felt. A greater portion of me simply felt worn out. I'm so sick of playing the villain in her stories. Everything I did. Oddly enough, this wasn't even the priciest item I had ever purchased with Kay. Her 2 hospital visits were more expensive. This, however, felt different. I wasn't assisting her in her time of need. This was her deliberate attempt to harm me while also taking advantage of me. I simply sat in my office and stared at the wall when everything was finished. We didn't communicate much. What might be said, I sat there contemplating how this had happened. I ruined the wedding of my own daughter. Regarding last-minute plans, the wedding coordinator kept phoning. I left everything on voicemail. When everyone arrived to a location that had been canceled, he assumed he would soon learn the truth. Is it terrible that I was genuinely anticipating the mayhem that would occur on the wedding day most likely? But I didn't care anymore at that moment. The wedding day gets off to a very typical start. Jenna and I are at home. We both simply sat there and tried to pretend that it was just another Saturday. However, every one of us continues to check our phones every 5 minutes. It's like watching an explosion countdown on a timer. My niece starts blowing up my phone at around 10 in the morning. It seems that when the wedding planner and his staff arrived at the location to begin setting up security, refused to let them in, showed them all the documents related to the cancellation. The wedding planner was in a panic, phoning Kay and me, but nobody answered and clearly contacting everyone. Kay arrives at the location at approximately 11. She is already set for pictures wearing her bridal gown and with full hair and makeup. In some way, my niece's comment that she looked quite attractive only made matters worse. She lost it when security informed her that the event had been canceled. It began yelling that there must be a mistake at the security personnel, attempted to push her way inside. She rushed past the guards who had to physically stop her. According to my niece, Kay was yelling, "Are you familiar with my father?" Ironically, though she didn't even want me to attend the wedding. The finest aspect, Tom, did not appear. As in it all, Mr. You can follow me down the aisle, didn't bother to show up at all. Kay called him repeatedly, according to my niece, but the calls went directly to voicemail. Then I suppose some people never change. Things become much more heated when the fiancé arrives. Kay is attempting to enter the venue by scaling an ornamental fence. The mud is going all over her clothing. Ben is attempting to prevent her from being arrested for trespassing. His boss is having a total breakdown as the wedding planners are on the phone. Around this time, all of the visitors begin to arrive. There are perhaps 200 individuals dressed up and nowhere to go. Down the street, cars are backed up. Everyone is perplexed, phoning each other. Phoning Kay, complete pandemonium. The food trucks show up. Apparently, they were not informed of the cancellation, and they are also unable to enter. Currently, 3 enormous catering vehicles are obstructing traffic. Kay is still yelling at security. As guests gather about in confusion, the wedding planner appears to be on the verge of passing out. Kay eventually discovers what transpired at that point. According to my niece, she suddenly became eerily silent. Then she informs everyone that she is laughing like a crazy person. My dad did this. Everything was damaged by him. She probably made 50 attempts to reach me and left increasingly bizarre voicemails. I didn't pay attention to them until much later. But wow, she threatened to burn down our house and murder me in order to kill Jenna. Crazy stuff. She arrives to our house at around 1 p.m., still wearing her bridal gown, which is now utterly damaged. Her face was dripping with makeup. However, I canceled her access code, so she is unable to pass the fence. For about 10 minutes in a row, she begins to lean on her car's horn and hold it down. The police were summoned by our neighbors. She was yelling about how I had destroyed her life and hurling rocks at our security cameras when they finally arrived. She was essentially dragged away by the police. Ben appeared to be so embarrassed that he wanted to die. Our security cameras captured the whole event, which I viewed. I couldn't stop watching even though Jenna kept asking me to. Such like this. Was my daughter wearing a filthy wedding dress and going through a total mental breakdown? My worst day ever. To be honest, I kept thinking that this wasn't what I wanted the entire time. Yes, I wanted to discipline her, but it was heartbreaking to see her break down like whey. It was difficult, really harsh. Later, I received a call from the wedding coordinator regarding the last payments. Advised him to speak with Kay about it. I hung up before he could finish speaking about his reputation being damaged. At that time, it was well past caring. Later, I learned that several of the attendees attended an unplanned celebration with cake from the grocery store at Kay and Ben's apartment. Very gloomy thing. The days after the wedding were apparently very busy. Similar to the fallout from nuclear power. Tense. First, the next morning, my parents arrived at our home. They drove 3 hours to come here, and they are in their 70s. My mother was furious and began to rant about how we never abandon our family and what sort of a father it was to spoil his daughter's wedding. To be honest, it hurt worse than Mom's ranting when Dad just sat there looking dissatisfied. I attempted to explain Tom and Kay's refusal to let us attend the wedding, but Mom wouldn't have it. She kept repeating things like, "You're the parent," and she's just confused. "You must be the larger one." She said it with ease. Kay has always surrounded them like an angel. Then the bomb was dropped. They proposed to cover the cost of a fresh wedding, like assuming full responsibility for all expenses. All right. Everything might be rescheduled. My own parents acting in such a way behind my back. That was painful. It ached a lot. However, Kay was able to exacerbate the situation. She really lost it on my parents when they visited her home to discuss paying for a new wedding. Began yelling that, like everyone else, they were betraying her and siding with me. Take this. Her instructor told me about the tablets, so it's complete nonsense that she blames them for her drug issues and claims they exposed her in high school and destroyed her life. My folks didn't know. I'm paraphrasing my mother when I say that she told them to go and never return. I yelled at my 75-year-old mother, who used to watch Kay every summer and indulge her to no end due to a heart issue. My parents finally seen what I had been going through at that point. Later that evening, Mom contacted me in tears and apologized for not trusting me, said she was unable to identify the irate woman who yelled at her. That's not acceptable. Hey, Mom, I know, she said repeatedly. From then on, the family took sides. I had the full support of my sister, who Kay lived with in high school. My brother Joe felt I went too far, but she had witnessed personally how Kay could be. Began this entire Civil War thing in the family. Let me tell you this. Thanksgiving is going to be a lot of fun, and Jenny's family comes next. Kay has never truly been liked by them. Over the years, they made an effort to remain impartial. I wonder why. However, they are finished after all of this. I should definitely refrain from repeating the Arabic terms that Jenny's mother called Kay. My pals are divided. I get sidelong glances from two business partners who seem to be unsure about my stability. I was discreetly booted off the board of the country club. I guess it's not a good look to wreck your daughter's wedding, even though she was deserving. The worst thing, Kay has been telling everyone that I did this because I'm racist toward Ben's family, and I found out. This is absurd, as Ben's family is made up of ordinary white Ohioans, while Jenna is actually Middle Eastern. However, the word is getting out. Because of that, I lost several contracts. As my reputation deteriorated, my secretary stopped reading all these false reports about me online. It's unbelievable. You did this, says the voice in the back of my mind during all of this. The grown-up is you. You need to have performed better. I have trouble sleeping most nights. I laid there thinking whether I had gone too far and if I should have been a nice father and just accepted it and paid for the wedding. Then I recall her treatment of my parents, these kind elderly folks who had only shown her kindness, how she brought my mom to tears. All of a sudden, I no longer feel as guilty. Through all of this, Jen has been my pillar of support. The other night, she saw me browsing through old photos of Kay as a newborn, simply sat with me, did not speak up. She's probably in pain too, but she's trying to be strong for me. Then, about a month after the catastrophe I caused, I learned via my niece's Instagram that Kay and Ben had a tiny wedding, like 20 pals at a cookout in the backyard. For that one too, Tom failed to appear. It's shocking. I suppose at least they were married. Life returned to a mostly regular state. I attempted to move on with Jen. I plunged headfirst into my task. In fact, I was beginning to feel better about everything. I then received a call from an unidentified number last week. It has been. My heart essentially quit beating. I thought Kay could have been hurt, but she wasn't. As it happens, the situation is even more chaotic than I had anticipated. Ben requested to have supper together. Refused to give me an explanation over the phone. Just stated that he needed to speak. Curiosity won over, even though I definitely should have ordered him to go lost. Jenny was informed that I was meeting him. It didn't make her happy. I visited this downtown pub. Gentlemen. Oh my God. As it happens, Kay and Ben broke up 3 months ago. Why, since she has been utterly frightening him, such as hurling plates during fights, smashing his belongings, and yelling at him for hours. Does that sound familiar? Ben says she acquired a similar paid position in another place, but she lost it all when they moved for his work. She became paranoid and accused him of separating her from her friends, claiming that everyone was against her. However, I was surprised when Ben expressed regret to me. He said that while he witnessed Kay's treatment of Jenna and me before to the wedding, he chose to remain silent because she had tricked him into believing that we were deserving. It was his words, not mine. He acknowledged that he ought to have recognized the warning signs, Kay said. He was first love-bombed, which was quite endearing and enjoyable. After they moved in together, she gradually began to display her true personality. He was already being cautious with her by the time the wedding drama occurred. Take this. When he wanted to invite his sister to their little backyard wedding, she even pitched a tantrum. Said that, similar to how Jenna treated his sister during his own wedding, she was attempting to control everything. Ben requested me to assist Kay in finding a therapist. Said that ever since they split up, she has been acting irrationally, contacting him 50 times a day and attending his workplace. Although he still loves her, he is unable to put up with the abuse any longer. I was at a loss for words. I wanted to welcome him to my remaining 20 years, part of me said. However, he appeared so shattered and sincere in his concern for Kay, made me think of myself when I was his age. Jenna pleaded with me not to go alone, but I didn't want her to have to deal with Kay's outrageously poor choice, so I went to visit Kay. Kay's flat was a worryingly disorganized mess. As soon as she spotted me, she summoned me and began to yell. All the names in the book. Blamed me for everything that went wrong in her life, including Ben leaving for her mother. I made an effort to remain composed and informed her that she needed assistance and that she should first consult a therapist before saying anything she wanted about me. She only chuckled. Then she said something that made me feel really cold. She said that she wanted to murder Jenna since she detested her so much. Not the same as casual hatred. I was terrified of her because of the expression in her eyes. After that cold, I departed really quickly. I tried, but there's nothing I can do, Ben from my automobile informed him. She's gone too far. However, I couldn't just quit up. I made contact with Kay's former high school closest mate. Back then, her family lived next door to us. They stayed in contact, even though she now resides in South Africa. I suggested that she try discussing obtaining treatment with Kay. It was surprisingly successful. Kay consented to therapy and even expressed regret to my parents last week, but she maintains that she will never forgive Jenna or me. I have no idea what will happen next. Somewhere buried behind all that hate and rage is the girl I reared. However, I can no longer be the one to save her. I had to experience that firsthand. I wanted to give everyone an update. I appreciate all of your help over the past 12 months. We especially appreciate the other parents who told similar tales. In all of this, it made me feel less alone. The lesson, I suppose, is that sometimes you may love someone deeply and still have to let them go, but it aches.